És ma, hölgyeim és uraim, beszélni fog hozzánk Robert Fico miniszterelnök úr is. Ne feledjétek, ő közülünk a legkeményebb. 5 lövést kapott. Szinte kiuggatták. A felherregelt, fellázított, liberális banda 5 golyót eresztett bele. És ma itt van velünk, harcol, mintha mi se történt volna. Ilyet még nem látott a világ. Ő Európa legnagyobb visszatérője. Köszönjük, Robert, hogy példát adsz nekünk.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Ladies, thank you. I will have a lot of problems in my country. Thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, first of all, I want to thank the organizers and the Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orbán. God bless him for his wisdom and courage, for the invitation and the opportunity to express a few reflections. Several people have asked me what reasons I have to speak at CPAC conferences, as I do now, or as I did recently in the United States. Yes, I am a leftist. I am a social democrat, but not of Brussels kind. First of all, I am a Slovak social democrat, or as I sometimes like to say, a rural socialist, a social democrat from the village. My task is to protect the interests of my fellow citizens and the national interests of Slovakia. I am a supporter of the idea of a strong welfare state. I am a strong statist. At the same time, I want to be perceived as a reliable and constructive partner in international organizations in which we consider our membership to be naturally important for us. Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes it seems impossible to reconcile the protection of national interests with the international demands and ideas of our, especially larger partners in the European Union. However, I do not intend to leave the idea of a sovereign Slovak foreign policy oriented towards all 4 cardinal points of the world and the consistent protection of the Slovak interests in the name of the perverse philosophy of a single mandatory political opinion. I do not want to see our sovereignty and national identity melt away in the genderless, supranational, international structures, especially those in Brussels. And I certainly do not intend to sacrifice the essence of Slovakia, which is based on more than 1,000 years of Christian tradition, traditional family as a fundamental component of our society, and strong anti-fascism. That is how I act. I am behind the important amendment of the Slovak Constitution, which defines marriage as a unique union between a man and a woman. On behalf of the government, I submitted to Parliament a further constitutional amendment concerning the existence of only 2 genders or the conditions for the adoption of children. As a strong leftist, I have no problem spending the night with the people on the production line to support higher night shift allowances or wage increases. As an anti-fascist politician, I felt the need to pay my respect in May this year in Moscow to more than 60,000 soldiers who died during the liberation of Slovakia. If such, ladies and gentlemen, if such sovereign and values-based behavior is a crime in Europe, we are on a very bad and dangerous path. If a political activist of the Slovak opposition wanted to assassinate me for my political positions, we are on an even more dangerous path. Value conflicts and disputes over the understanding of national sovereignty and identity do not only take place at the national level. In the EU, together with my friend Viktor Orban, I clearly opposed mandatory quotas and the wrong approach to illegal migration. At a time when nuclear energy was taboo in the European Union, I pushed for the completion of 2 more nuclear units in Slovakia. I am an uncompromising advocate of respect for the rules of international law. Slovakia does not have enough fighter jets, missiles, drones, and ammunition to enforce its ideas by military force. If we withdrew Slovak troops from Iraq, we did so because the war was a flagrant violation of international law with huge civilian casualties. I am talking about the same gross violation of international law now in relation to the war in Ukraine. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been in politics since 1991. I mean in top Slovak politics. And I cannot remember so much nervousness and aggressiveness accumulated in the international community. From outbreaks of wars to trade wars to disrespect in international politics. The European Union, instead of playing an honest peacekeeping role and giving priority to diplomatic efforts, is subject to this nervousness and aggressiveness in equal measure. Any opinion different from the only correct one that is mandatory, pursued particularly by big players in the European Union, is immediately suppressed. All we have to do is to express, for instance, a different opinion about the president of Ukraine, or to refuse to give arms to Ukraine despite the fact that we are helping it in every other way, or to call the strategy of the European Commission to stop all energy supplies from Russia as economically damaging and undermining the EU's competitiveness. The reaction will come immediately. Most recently, Slovakia and Hungary have received a message from a particularly nervous new German Chancellor. In short, his message to us was, if you do not obey and you continue with your sovereign positions, if you do not support one single mandatory political opinion concerning Ukraine and the obligation to spread hatred against Russia, you will be punished. For example, by suspension of EU funds or withdrawal of voting rights. No one, ladies and gentlemen, in the European Union, no one in a peaceful and democratic project should have the right to treat other EU member states in this way, regardless of their size and economic strength. The strengths of the European Union lies in compromises, mutual respect, and the rejection of the dictates of the stronger against the weaker. Slovakia is not criticized today for a gross violation of human rights, the rule of law, or democracy. That is what had here in 2020-23, when we were in the opposition illegally arrested and accused, when the mouths of the free media were shut, when innocent people were dying in detention. Where were the great democracies and the European Union as a whole then? if they have no realistic response to the war in Ukraine today, which is a country has been the victim of the senseless prolongation of this military conflict, if the answer is only to build a new Iron Curtain between Europe and Russia, which even the United States does not want, they cannot continue in their nervousness by suppressing the sovereignty of individual member states on legitimate issues. Ladies and gentlemen, we may have to expect unprecedented decisions, such as, for example, the abolition of the right of veto of EU member states and its replacement by qualified majority voting. The time may indeed come when there will be punishments for having a sovereign opinion on EU competitiveness or the war in Ukraine. One thing I do know, however, for sure, and before that thing, I want to warn and take this opportunity to send my warning as far as possible. The imposition of a mandatory political opinion, the abolition of the veto, the punishment of the sovereign and the brave, the new Iron Curtain, the preference for war over peace, this is the end of the common European project. This is a departure from democracy. This is the precursor of a huge military conflict. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not EU vision that I intend to support. After all, the Union should be built on the principle of unity in diversity, instead of irritated responses to our sovereign opinions. Together, we should launch a constructive discussion about the EU's future. After all, we see that trust in the Union's institutions is deeply eroded, whether it is individual failures of individual members of the European Commission or the various yet unsuccessful visions, strategies, concepts and roadmaps that have led us to economic decline, loss of competitiveness and unprecedented security challenges. We, small Slovakia, have also invested tens of billions of euros into the European Union, and our voice must carry weight in such a dialogue. And if we truly care about peace, we must be willing to communicate even with those who are often demonized like Russia. Only in this way we can end the war in Ukraine, which is weakening us all and in recent weeks significantly threatening us given the increasingly irresponsible saber-rattling by most European countries. Ladies and gentlemen, I conclude with a challenge. Let our diversity, sovereignty and national identity be our strength and not weakness. Thank you very much.